Section 3.4, the slope-intercept form of a linear function. First of all, what's a slope? Slope of a line is like how sharp the line is. This is the layman's term for what? Definition of a slope. How sharp is it? Is it flat? Is it like, going up, or is it going down, or is it vertical? So the sharpness of the line is what? Defined as slope of a line. Okay, so the notation we use is m, which is lowercase m, which is defined as the ratio of the rise over run. It's like vertical change, the amount of vertical change if you go from one point to the next point on a line, divided by the amount of change what horizontally determines the slope of a line. What does that mean? That means if I have 2 points on the line, let's say that's 2 points, and I want to know how sharp this guy is, so I have to measure what? This much. That's my amount of what? Change vertically. And then this much amount of change what? Horizontally. So this is like rise, this is like run. The ratio, the division of rise by run tells you how sharp the line is, correct? Once again, that's given 2 points on a line. Let's say x1, y1. Let's say this guy is x1, y1. Let's say this guy is x2, y2. So by definition, m is defined as y2 minus y1. That means the difference of the y components over the difference of the x components. Remember, x is like how much sideways you go on the line, and y is like how much you go up and down the line, right? So let's find the slope of the following points on a straight line. So suppose I label these guys as x1, y1, x2, y2. Does it matter how I label these guys? Absolutely not. So the way I do it is I put, a couple of parentheses on top with a minus and a couple of parentheses at the bottom of the fraction with a minus sign in between. So I decided this is x2, y2, that's x1, y1. So I'm going to go 5 minus 3 over negative 1 minus what? 2. So I'm going to work this out. That's 2 minus 3, which is negative 2/3. So what does that mean? So that means I have a line which happens to be as sharp as this slope. But what is this? That means for every 2 units you go down, you got to go over what? 3 units over. So that means the line is what? Falling. So from point A to point B, you got to go 2 down, 3 over. 2 down, 3 over. And the ratio, division of these two numbers happens to be the slope of the line, which means how sharp the line is. Okay, continuing on, let's say this is x1, y1, that's x2, y2. Once again, I put a couple of parentheses on top, a couple of parentheses at the bottom with a minus sign in between. So I'm going to go negative 1 minus minus 1, and this is 4 minus 3. That would be negative 1 plus 1, which is 0, and that's 1. So the slope is 0. So what does that mean? That means you are not going up and down, but you're going what? 1 unit over from point A to point B. So that means the line is what? Is pretty much a flat line. Do you see it? So this is called horizontal line. This guy is called what? Decreasing line. This guy is called what? Horizontal line. And it goes. Do you see it? What about this guy? Negative 6, 5, negative 6, negative 10. So x1, y1, x2, y2. So a couple of parentheses with a minus in between. This is like filling out the application. So here's a blank application, fill it out. So you get negative 10, minus 5, negative 6, minus 6. which is negative 15 over 6 minus minus is plus. Negative 6 plus 6 is 0. So what does that mean? That means if I want to go from point A to B on the line, I'm allowed to go what? 15 units down, but no movement sideways. So what does that tell you? That tells you the line is a what? Vertical line. So recap. If the slope is negative, the line decreases. If the slope is 0, the line is a flat line. If the slope is so-called undefined, the line is vertical. If the slope comes up positive, the line is increasing. That means it goes up. Very nice. Now, one of the useful form of a line, equation of a line, is slope-intercept form, which is denoted by f of x equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is what? The y-intercept. That's where the line crosses the y-axis, and this is how sharp the line is, correct? So in the following problems, some of you might have seen this form, so it might be a repeat for you, but just bear with me. So identify the slope and the y-intercept of the following lines. In this case, remember, in order identify the slope and line, the y has to be on one side all by itself. There should be no number attached to it or nothing added or subtracted from it, correct? So this guy is in pretty good shape. This is in slope-intercept form. Guess what? The coefficient of x is the slope. So the slope is negative 3 over 1. That means for every 3 units you go down, you go 1 over. Because the slope is negative, so the line is what? Decreasing line. It goes down. And what is the y-intercept? Is this number 4. But usually we write this as 0, 4 just to indicate or remind ourselves x is 0. This guy, believe it or not, is 1/2 times x plus 5. So the slope is 1/2 and the y-intercept is 5. So I'm going to write that as 0, 5. So what's going on here? Well, the slope is positive. So that means for every 1 unit I go up, I go 2 units over. So that means the line is what? Increasing. So this is decreasing. This is increasing line. What about this guy? Well, this is not quite in the slope-intercept form, so the first thing you do is you divide everyone by 2, going from left to right, so you get y is equal to 2x minus 1/2. Guess what? Slope is what? 2 over 1, and the y-intercept is negative 1/2. I'm looking at this guy. Right? So because the slope is positive, the line increases and the y-intercept is 0, negative 1/2. So that means this is where the line crosses the what? X-axis, y-axis. This guy is in a standard form, so the first thing I do is solve this equation for y. So step 1, solve for y. So what do? Subtract 3x from each side. You get negative 2y equals negative 3x, what? Plus 5, correct? Then you divide, what? Everyone from left to right, all across by negative 2. So you end up with y is equal to positive 3/2 of x minus 5/2. Negative over negative is positive. Positive over negative is negative. Well, guess what? The slope is 3/2, so it's positive. The line is still increasing. And the y-intercept is negative 5/2, so it's 0, negative 5/2. You all see it. Okay. This is method what? 3. For what? For graphing a line. What is method number 3 called? It's called slope, what? Intercept form method of graphing, which is fantastic. I mean, if I had a choice, I would choose this any time of the day because it's so easy. I don't need table or none of that stuff. All right then, so let's get right to it. This guy is in pretty good shape. I can identify the slope as 3, give a denominator of 1 because the slope is a ratio of two numbers. And the y-intercept is -1. Remember, we write this as 0, -1. Am I ready to graph this? You betcha. Here we go. So what do? First, find out where the line hits the y-axis at 0, -1. Then do the slope at that point. So do the slope. What does that mean? Go up 3, 1, 2, 3, over 1. There it is. There goes my second dot. And what do you know? I have the line. See how easy that was. So here are the steps. Locate the y-intercept. At that point, do the slope. So in this case, 0, -1 was the y-intercept. The slope was 3 over 1. So I went what? Up 3, right? Over 1. Remember, slope is always a fraction. This guy is in pretty good shape. Slope is -2/5. Is that right? And the y-intercept is +3, just by inspection. So here's my x and y axis. Remember, when you say +3, you mean 0, 3. So you go up 3 like so. Okay, so that's 0, 3. At that point, you do the slope. -2 over 5, what does that mean? That means you go down to 1, 2 over 5. 1, 2, 4, 5. There goes your second point. Once you got 2 points, you're ready to graph the line. Do you see it? How easy it is? No tables, no fuss, no muss. All right, what about this guy? Well, hey, divide both sides by 3 first. So that would be y is equal to, by the way, there's an invisible 1 next to x. You don't see it. So that's my way of saying the slope is what? 1/3, and the y-intercept is -2. So once again, you have what? -2, that means you go down 2 along the y-axis, and then from there you do the slope. When you say 1/3, you go up 1 over 3. 1, 2, 3. There goes the second point, because you know what it takes to graph a line is what? To have 2 points on the line. 1 point doesn't cut it. This guy is not in what? Is not in what? In slope intercept form. So I need to solve what? For y. So what I do, I subtract 2x from each side. So I get 5y is equal to -2x plus 10, correct? Divide both sides by 5. And you get what? Y equals -2/5 of x plus 2, because 5 goes into 10 twice. So now I can identify the slope. The slope is the number attached to the x, and the constant number with no x is your y-intercept, which I'm going to write this as what? 0, 2. So here's the x-axis, here's the y-axis. So 2 means you're going to go up along the y-axis 2 units. At that point, you do the slope. Slope is negative, so the line is going to fall. So that means you're going to go 2 units down and 5 over from the y-intercept. 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 over. And as I expected, the line is going to fall. You see it. When x is missing, that means what? The slope is 0. Okay, so I'm going to give a denominator of 1, right? Now you're going to see why the graph is a horizontal line. Check this out. Slope is 0. You don't see the number. There is no x. But the y-intercept is 6, which we're going to write that as well. 0, 6. Correct? What does that mean? That means you go up along the y-axis 6 units. Correct? And from there, you do the slope. Let's see what the slope is. 0 over 1, that means don't go up and down, okay? Just stay where you are, but go 1 unit over, so there. And lo and behold, can you tell the graph is a what? Horizontal line, as we suspected. Do you see it? So the graph is a horizontal line when x is missing. So these are called constant functions, correct? As a matter of fact, let me just show you one more example before we move on to the next topic. Suppose I have no y-intercept. What if the problem was graph, let's say y equals 2/3 of x. So this guy is in pretty good shape. It's in the form of what? Y is equal to mx plus b form. So it's in the slope-intercept form. So I can tell the slope is 2/3, but there is no y. If there is no y, so you can write this as 2/3 of x plus 0. So therefore, the y-intercept is 0. Remember, this is 0, comma 0. What does that mean? That means the line is going to go through the origin when what? There is no y-intercept. So what you do, you kind of go, okay, here's 0, 0, right? From there, you do the slope. Slope is positive, so you go 2 units up, right? 3 units over, 1, 2, 3, there it is, and you have it. So every time there is no y-intercept, that means the graph is going to go through the origin. And that's pretty much how you graph these kind of functions. So keep that in mind. And now let's get back to the last topic of this section. Sometimes they give you 2 points on a line, but one of the components of one of the point is missing. However, they tell you what the slope is. The question is find the missing component of the what? One of the points on the line. In other words, if this is a line, one of the points is what? 3, comma, -5, but the other point is 4, comma, something, right? But I do know the slope of this line is 1/3. I know how sharp the line is. Can you find that missing component of the point B, which happens to be the y component? For these kind of problems, excuse me, you go back to the formula of the slope, correct? Do I know what the slope is? Yes, they told me it's 1/3. Do I know what y2 is? I'm going to call this y2. I'm going to call this x2. I'm going to call this x1, y1. I'm just going to follow the formula. So y2 minus y1, that's y minus -5 over 4 minus 3. So my job is what? Solve for y. How do I do that? Well, you get 1/3 equals y. Negative times negative is positive. 4 minus 3 is 1. So now because I have a fraction on the left, one fraction on the right, I'm going to what? Cross multiply like so. So I'm going to get 3 times what? Y plus 5 equals 1 times 1. That's called cross multiplication. That's how we get rid of the fractions when you have an equal sign between the fractions and there is only one fraction on the left, one fraction on the right. Okay, so now distribute. So you get what? As a matter of fact, you can multiply the 1, so you get 1. You can just divide both sides by 3 if you like, because that's 3 times y plus 5. Opposite of multiplication is division. So y plus 5 is equal to 1/3. And now the only thing left is what? Subtract 5 from both sides. When you do, you get what? -5, what? Plus 1/3. Okay, give a denominator of 1 to 5. So what is -5 over 1 plus 1/3? Well, the lowest common denominator is 3. 1 goes into 3 3 times. 3 times -5 is -15. 3 goes into 3 once. 1 times 1 is 1. So now that we have common denominator, we can combine the tops. Negative 15 plus 1 is negative 14 thirds. So the final answer is y, that missing number, is negative 14 thirds. Do you see it? Last problem of this section, given 2 points, A, what? X, comma 5, B is negative 2, negative 3. With the slope of 4, can you tell us what's the missing component of point A? Once again, here's point A. We don't know what the X component of point A is. Okay, we do know both components of B. We also know the slope is 4 because we were given, you know. So how do you find what? This guy. Okay, how do you find the missing component of what? X value. Once again, you always start for these kind of problems by reminding yourself what the definition of a slope of a line is. Rise over run. Okay, do I know slope? Yes, I do. It's 4. I'm going to call this x1, x2, y2. Not that it matters. I'm going to call this x1, y1. You could have called this x2, y2 and x1, y1. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to get, let's see, 2 parentheses with a minus just to remind myself how the formula works. Okay, so this would be negative 3, that would be 5, this would be negative 2, and this would be x. What is my job now? To solve for x, correct? So I'm going to give a denominator of 1 to 4. So 3 minus 5 is negative 8. And that's negative 2 minus x. Once again, because I have an equation, equality of 2 fractions, I'm going to cross multiply if you don't mind. So I'm going to get 4 times what? Negative 2 minus x equals 1 times negative 8. So what do you do? First thing I do, you could distribute the 4, you get the same answer. Well, here's a faster way to do it. Divide both sides by 4. We get negative 2 minus x equals negative 2 because 4 divides into negative 8, negative 2 times. Add 2 to both sides, correct? You get negative x equals 0. Okay. Now divide both sides by negative 1, and lo and behold, you get x equals what? 0. So that missing component of point A happens to be 0. If you put 0 here and you do the slope, you're guaranteed to get slope of 4. Thank you.